The soft morning light filtered through the tall windows of Kensington Palace as Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood before an ornate mirror in her dressing room. Her reflection showed a woman who had transformed from a commoner into one of the most watched figures in the world, yet today felt different from any other day in her royal journey. Today was King Charles III's coronation, and every thread, every jewel, every carefully chosen element of her attire would speak volumes to millions watching around the globe. Sarah, her longtime dresser, moved quietly around the room, handling each piece of Catherine's ensemble with the reverence reserved for historical artifacts. Because that's exactly what they were becoming. Pieces of history that would be analyzed, discussed, and remembered for generations to come. "Your Royal Highness, shall we begin with the dress?" Sarah asked softly, her hands already reaching for the elegant ivory silk crepe creation that hung like a work of art on its special hanger. Catherine nodded, her mind wandering to the months of planning that had led to this moment. Every decision about her coronation outfit had been deliberate, each choice carrying layers of meaning that went far beyond fashion. The dress itself was a masterpiece by Alexander McQueen, the same fashion house that had created her iconic wedding gown 12 years earlier. The ivory silk crepe flowed like liquid moonlight, its color chosen not just for its elegance, but for its symbolic representation of new beginnings and purity of purpose. The silhouette was both modern and timeless, featuring a fitted bodice that highlighted Catherine's graceful figure while maintaining the dignity befitting such a solemn occasion. But it was the embroidery that told the real story. Delicate silver threads wove intricate patterns across the fabric, creating motifs that seemed simple at first glance, but revealed deeper meanings upon closer inspection. Rose, thistle, daffodil, and shamrock, the floral emblems of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, were carefully embroidered throughout the design, symbolizing the unity of the United Kingdom under the new reign. As Sarah helped Catherine step into the dress, the princess felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders along with the silk. This wasn't just about looking beautiful or fashionable. This was about representing something larger than herself, about honoring tradition while embracing the future. The sleeves of the dress were particularly meaningful, designed with subtle nods to Queen Elizabeth II's coronation gown from 1953. The same delicate embroidery technique had been used, connecting Catherine's moment to the late Queen's legacy while establishing her own place in royal history. It was a bridge between past and present, a visual representation of continuity and change working in harmony. Meanwhile, in another wing of the palace, Prince William was undergoing his own transformation. His military uniform was not chosen randomly, but selected to honor his service and his role as heir to the throne. The blue and red of the Welsh Guards, a regiment of which he was colonel, spoke to his connection to Wales, the principality that had given him his current title. The gold braiding on William's uniform caught the morning light as his valet, James, made final adjustments. Each decoration, each medal, each insignia had been earned through years of service and dedication, but today they served another purpose. They told the story of a man who had served his country in multiple capacities and was ready to take on even greater responsibilities. William's approach to his coronation attire reflected his personality perfectly. While respecting tradition and protocol, he had insisted on wearing medals and honors that he had actually earned rather than purely ceremonial decorations. This authentic approach resonated with a modern public that valued genuine achievement over inherited privilege. The couple's choice of designers was itself a statement. Alexander McQueen for Catherine represented British fashion excellence and innovation, while William's military tailors from Savile Row embodied centuries of British craftsmanship and tradition. Together, they created a visual narrative about British heritage, excellence, and the marriage of tradition with contemporary values. As Catherine's hair was styled into an elegant updo that would properly support the ceremonial headpiece she would wear, she reflected on the conversations she and William had shared during the planning process. They had both been keenly aware that their appearance today would be scrutinized not just for its beauty, but for its appropriateness, its symbolism, and its message to the world about the kind of royal couple they intended to be. The makeup artist worked with subtle, natural tones that enhanced Catherine's features without overwhelming them. The goal was timeless elegance rather than trendy beauty. Every decision was made with the understanding that these images would be part of history books, that children decades from now would see these pictures when learning about the British monarchy of the early 21st century. Sarah brought over the shoes, elegant pumps in the same ivory tone as the dress, with a modest heel that would allow Catherine to stand and walk with grace during the long ceremony. Even something as simple as shoe choice carried weight. Too high a heel might seem inappropriate for such a solemn occasion, while too flat a shoe might not provide the proper silhouette for the formal gown. The attention to detail extended to elements that most observers would never see. Catherine's undergarments were specially designed to provide support and comfort during hours of ceremony while maintaining the perfect lines of her dress. Even her hosiery was custom-made to ensure a flawless appearance from every angle. As the morning progressed, both Catherine and William began to feel the transformation taking place. They were becoming more than themselves. They were becoming symbols, representatives not just of the monarchy, but of British values, traditions, and aspirations. Their clothing was their armor, their statement to the world about who they were and who they intended to become. The final touches were being applied as news reports from around the world began broadcasting live from outside Westminster Abbey. Millions of people were already gathering, either in person or in front of television screens, to witness this historic moment. And while they would see the pageantry, the ceremony, and the grandeur, few would fully understand the careful thought and deep symbolism woven into every thread of what the Prince and Princess of Wales would wear. The morning preparations were nearly complete, but the real story of their coronation attire was just beginning to unfold. Each element they wore would speak not just to the crowds gathered that day, but to history itself, creating a visual legacy that would endure long after the ceremony concluded. Catherine stood before the full-length mirror as Sarah approached with the most significant piece of her ensemble, the headpiece that would crown her look for this historic day. It wasn't just any tiara or crown, but a carefully selected piece that would communicate volumes about her role, her respect for tradition, and her vision for the future. The Strathmore Rose Tiara, also known as the Rosebud Tiara, had been chosen after careful consideration and consultation with royal historians and jewelry experts. Originally belonging to the late Queen Mother, this delicate piece represented a connection to one of the most beloved members of the royal family in modern history. The Queen Mother's grace, dignity, and ability to connect with ordinary people during extraordinary times made her an ideal role model for Catherine as she stepped into her expanded role. The tiara's design featured diamond-set roses and rosebud motifs, symbolizing new growth, hope, and the promise of things to come. As Sarah carefully positioned it on Catherine's head, the princess felt the weight of not just the precious metals and gems, but of the legacy she was being asked to carry forward. But the choice of this particular tiara carried even deeper significance that royal watchers and historians would spend years analyzing. The rose was England's national flower, but it also represented the Tudor rose, the symbol that united the warring houses of York and Lancaster and brought peace to a divided nation. In wearing this symbol, Catherine was subtly communicating her role as a unifier, someone who could bridge different worlds and bring people together. The way the light caught the diamonds created a subtle sparkle that photographers would capture from every angle, but few would realize that even the quality of that sparkle had been considered. The tiara had been recently cleaned and restored to ensure that it would photograph beautifully, under the specific lighting conditions expected in Westminster Abbey. William's accessories were equally meaningful, though perhaps less obviously so. His ceremonial sword, worn at his side, was not merely decorative, but carried the weight of centuries of military tradition. The sword had been passed down through generations of royals who had served in the military, and its presence at his side served as a reminder of the oath of service that came with royal privilege. The medals and decorations adorning William's uniform told the story of his military career in vivid detail. His Afghanistan service medal spoke to his deployment as an Apache helicopter pilot, a role that had put him in real danger and earned him the respect of his fellow service members. Unlike purely ceremonial honors, this medal represented genuine service and sacrifice, qualities that the modern public expected from their future king. The Order of the Garter Star, prominently displayed on William's uniform, connected him to a tradition stretching back to 1348, making it one of the oldest orders of chivalry in the world. But its inclusion wasn't just about honoring the past. It represented values of honor, courage, and service that remained relevant in the contemporary world. Catherine's jewelry choices extended beyond the tiara to include earrings that had once belonged to Princess Diana. The pearl and diamond drop earrings were elegant and understated, but their provenance made them incredibly powerful symbols. In wearing them, Catherine honored William's late mother while also demonstrating the continuity of the royal family despite tragedy and loss. The choice to wear Diana's earrings was particularly poignant given the similarities between the two women's positions. Both had married into the royal family as commoners, both had faced intense media scrutiny, and both had been expected to modernize and humanize the monarchy. By wearing Diana's jewelry, Catherine acknowledged this connection, while also establishing her own identity and approach. The fabric of Catherine's dress had been woven by British artisans, using techniques that had been passed down through generations. This wasn't just about supporting British industry, though that was certainly important. It was about honoring the craftsmanship and skill that had made British textiles famous around the world for centuries. Every thread told a story of tradition, excellence, and the marriage of old techniques with new innovations. The embroidery work on the dress had taken hundreds of hours to complete, with each floral motif carefully researched to ensure historical accuracy. The roses weren't just any roses. They were specifically the variety associated with the houses of York and Lancaster. The thistles were the exact species found in the Scottish Highlands. The daffodils matched those that bloomed in Welsh valleys each spring. Even in these tiny details, the dress told the story of the United Kingdom's rich natural and cultural heritage. William's uniform included subtle personal touches that spoke to his individual journey. The pilot's wings prominently displayed represented not just his military service, but his passion for aviation, which had led him to serve as an air ambulance pilot after his military career. This civilian service had connected him directly with ordinary people during some of their most difficult moments, experiences that had shaped his understanding of leadership and service. The ceremonial chain worn across William's chest featured medallions representing various orders and honors, but their arrangement wasn't random. The positioning followed protocols established over centuries, with each element placed according to strict rules of precedence and tradition. Yet within these constraints there was room for personal expression and meaning. Catherine's choice of handbag, a small, elegant clutch in ivory silk to match her dress, might have seemed like a minor detail, but even this carried significance. The bag was British-made, supporting domestic craftsmanship, and its modest size reflected the understated elegance that had become Catherine's signature style. She had consistently chosen accessories that enhanced rather than overwhelmed her outfits, demonstrating an understanding that her role was to represent something larger than herself. The couple's wedding rings, simple gold bands that they wore every day, provided a touch of personal intimacy amidst all the formal regalia. These rings, made from Welsh gold following royal tradition, represented their commitment to each other and their shared journey. In a day filled with historical artifacts and ceremonial objects, these simple bands reminded observers that at the heart of all the pageantry were two people who had chosen to build a life together. The coordination between Catherine's and William's outfits was subtle but deliberate. The silver embroidery on her dress complemented the silver elements in his uniform decorations. The blue undertones in her ivory dress harmonized with the blue elements in his military colors. These weren't accidents, but careful choices made to present them as a unified team while allowing each to maintain their individual identity. As they prepared for their departure to Westminster Abbey, both Catherine and William understood that they were wearing more than clothes and accessories. They were wearing the expectations of a nation, the weight of history, and the hopes for the future. Every element had been chosen not just for its beauty, but for its ability to communicate values, connections, and commitments that words alone could not express. The emotional weight of these choices was not lost on either of them. As they looked at themselves in the mirror one final time before leaving for the ceremony, they saw not just their reflection, but the reflection of centuries of tradition, the hopes of millions of people, and their own commitment to serving something greater than themselves. As Catherine and William made their final preparations, the emotional weight of the day began to settle over them like a gentle but persistent tide. This wasn't just another royal event or ceremonial obligation. This was the moment when they would step fully into their roles as the future of the British monarchy, and their clothing choices were their first official statement to the world about what kind of leaders they intended to be. Catherine paused for a moment in front of her bedroom mirror, taking in her complete reflection. The woman looking back at her was someone who had traveled an extraordinary journey from a middle-class family in Berkshire to the very heart of one of the world's oldest institutions. Her dress, with its careful blend of tradition and modernity, told that story in silk and silver thread. The emotional significance of wearing Princess Diana's earrings began to overwhelm her for a moment. Catherine had never met William's mother, but she had lived with Diana's legacy every day since their relationship became public. These earrings weren't just beautiful pieces of jewelry, they were a connection to a woman who had faced many of the same challenges Catherine now faced, who had struggled to balance public duty with private humanity, who had ultimately paid the ultimate price for her position in the spotlight. As she touched the pearls gently, Catherine felt a profound sense of responsibility. Diana had wanted to modernize the monarchy to make it more accessible and relevant to ordinary people. Now Catherine had the opportunity to continue that work, to honor Diana's memory not through words, but through actions, through the kind of royal she chose to become. William was experiencing his own emotional journey in his dressing room. As James made final adjustments to his uniform, William thought about his grandfather, Prince Philip, who had died just 2 years earlier. Philip had been a model of duty and service, someone who had given up his own naval career to support Queen Elizabeth II's reign. The military precision of William's uniform was a tribute to Philip's influence and example. The weight of his ceremonial sword at his side reminded William of the oath he had taken as a young officer, the promise to serve his country regardless of personal cost. That oath had taken on new dimensions as he prepared to become heir apparent. His service would no longer be measured in military deployments or helicopter missions, but in decades of public duty, in being a steady presence for the British people through whatever challenges lay ahead. When Catherine and William finally came together in the palace corridor, both fully dressed and ready for their historic day, they shared a moment of quiet recognition. They had both traveled far from the university students who had first met at St. Andrews. Their clothing today represented not just their current roles, but the journey that had brought them to this point. Catherine reached out and straightened a medal on William's uniform. a small, intimate gesture that spoke to their partnership. William smiled and touched her hand, noting how the diamond in her engagement ring, Diana's ring, caught the light and seemed to sparkle with approval. These small moments of connection amidst all the formal preparation reminded them that their strongest foundation was their relationship with each other. The drive to Westminster Abbey gave them time to reflect on the deeper meanings of their choices. Catherine's dress would be photographed thousands of times that day, but she hoped that future generations would see in it a commitment to British craftsmanship, to supporting local artisans and industries. The months of work that had gone into creating her ensemble had provided employment for dozens of skilled craftspeople, from the embroiderers who had spent countless hours perfecting each floral motif to the jewelers who had restored her tiara. William's uniform told a story of earned respect rather than inherited privilege. Each decoration, each insignia represented genuine service and achievement. In an era when public trust in institutions was fragile, he wanted his appearance to communicate authenticity and dedication. The uniform wasn't just a costume, it was a promise that he understood the weight of leadership and had prepared himself to bear it responsibly. As their car approached Westminster Abbey, they could see the crowds that had gathered despite the early hour. These were people who had traveled from across the United Kingdom and around the world to witness this moment in person. Catherine and William understood that their clothing choices would be scrutinized not just by these crowds, but by millions more watching on television and online. The international significance of their appearance choices couldn't be overlooked. Catherine's decision to wear British designers and showcase British craftsmanship was a form of soft diplomacy, promoting the country's cultural and creative industries to a global audience. William's military uniform communicated Britain's ongoing commitment to security and international cooperation. But perhaps most importantly, their coordinated but individual styling sent a message about modern partnership and equality. Catherine wasn't simply decorating William's ceremony. She was standing beside him as an equal partner in the work of monarchy. Her dress was beautiful but not overshadowing, elegant but not frivolous, traditional but not outdated. The emotional climax came as they stepped out of their car at Westminster Abbey. The crowds erupted in cheers, cameras flashed from every direction, and history began to record their appearance for posterity. In that moment, Catherine and William felt the full weight of what their clothing choices represented. They weren't just wearing beautiful garments, they were wearing the hopes and expectations of millions of people. They were wearing the legacy of centuries of British history while also representing the possibility of a more modern, accessible monarchy. They were wearing their commitment to each other and to the people they would serve for the rest of their lives. As they walked up the steps of the Abbey, Catherine's dress moved gracefully around her, the silver embroidery catching the light and creating an almost ethereal effect. William's uniform reflected his military bearing and dignity. Together they presented an image of continuity and change, of respect for tradition, combined with readiness for the future. The Abbey doors opened before them, revealing the assembled congregation of world leaders, dignitaries, and representatives of British society. As Catherine and William stepped inside, their carefully chosen attire would become part of one of the most significant ceremonies in modern British history. In years to come, fashion historians would analyze every detail of their appearance. Political commentators would discuss the symbolism of their choices, and ordinary people would remember the image of a couple who seemed to embody both the grandeur of monarchy and the accessibility of modern leadership. But in that moment, as they walked down the aisle of Westminster Abbey, Catherine and William were simply two people who had chosen their clothes with extraordinary care because they understood that sometimes the most powerful messages are communicated not through words, but through the visual language of fabric, jewels, and tradition. Their coronation attire would become part of royal history, preserved in photographs that would be studied by future generations. But more than that, Their choices that day established a template for how modern royalty could honor the past while embracing the future, how tradition and innovation could work together, and how personal style could serve a purpose far greater than individual expression. The hidden significance of their coronation attire lay not in any single element, but in the totality of their choices, choices that reflected careful thought, deep respect, personal meaning, and a profound understanding of their role in history. As they took their places for the ceremony, they knew that they were wearing more than clothes. They were wearing the future of the British monarchy itself.